Today, Americans face as great a crisis as our countrymen faced during the years of the Cold War. The threat today is different but equally as dangerous. It is a threat to Americans' freedom and in particular the right of Americans to worship as they choose. This is a direct threat to Catholics, Protestants, evangelicals, and Jews who wish to worship God according to the dictates of their own conscience. I'm speaking of the threat posed by certain elements of militant Islamism who seek to impose Sharia or Islamic law on all Americans to prevent Americans from worshiping freely as Catholics, as Protestants, as evangelicals, as Jews. To force Americans to recognize Sharia as the law of the land and to replace our Constitution with its Bill of Rights guaranteeing freedom of worship, speech, press, assembly, and various other freedoms. Now, while it is true that American law enforcement agencies and intelligence agencies are working diligently to expose the conspiratorial threats posed by militant Islamism to Americans and to our way of life, it is also true that the best official agencies in the world cannot be everywhere at every time. Luckily, we in the United States enjoy the individual right to keep and bear arms, as expressed in the Second Amendment to our Constitution, and has been explicitly ascertained in recent decisions of the United States Supreme Court. We know that about 100 million Americans exercise this freedom, and that about 100 million Americans own about 200 million rifles, shotguns, and handguns. Now, while we hope that such an eventuality will not occur, there always is the possibility, as underscored by reports of intelligence officials, that it may be necessary for Americans to be able to defend themselves, their families, their freedom of religion, their various other freedoms, with recourse to the use of firearms as recognized by the Second Amendment. Consequently, it is incumbent upon Americans not only to be able to exercise their rights, and in fact to exercise them, but to be well versed, to be well trained, to be ready, willing, and able to defend themselves and their families, their other loved ones, their property, and more important, their freedom to worship as they choose, should the necessity to defend those freedoms with force occur. Again, I say, we hope this will not be necessary. We would like to see the militant Islamists converted to freedom of expression, to the freedoms, to appreciate the freedoms which we enjoy in the United States. But barring that, barring the inability or the unwillingness of militant Islamists to convert to the ideals of freedom, it may be necessary to defend our freedoms with the force which we as Americans, as American individuals, are capable and hopefully able to exercise.